So first I want to thank the media for being here at this very important news conference. It's basically the outcome of a case that we've been working on for several months now. My name is Traci Fant. I'm organizer of Freedom Fighters Upstate South Carolina. I'm accompanied by my client, Benny Jones, BENNY-JONES. Mr. Jones contacted me in late July after an officer-involved assault occurred at him in his home in front of his children when he was just basically bear witnessing to someone else's arrest. On July 25th, 2020, Benny saw the police stop someone in front of his home. He and his children immediately went to the front porch just to watch his onlookers. He stepped off his porch into his grass and watched as the police began to arrest the young man who they had pulled over. That young man proceeded to flee from the police. At the same time, the officer, Ryabn Gibson, approached Benny, became very aggressive towards him, started speaking to him in profane language, slammed him to the ground, slammed him face first into his vehicle, and then shoved him into the police car. The whole time in front of Benny's children, and Benny never once resisted because, as I stated before, he was not the person, he was not the suspect who the police were there to accost in the first place. Upon meeting with Mr. Jones, I contacted Sheriff Hobart Lewis because I wanted to make sure that I helped my client go about the correct steps into filing the complaint. While speaking to Sheriff Lewis, I told him that Benny was right beside me and that he was very upset. Sheriff Lewis asked to speak to him, and he said, "Please, whatever you do, file a complaint because I definitely want to look into this." I then asked the sheriff, was I able to file a complaint on his behalf? And he said, "No, unfortunately you're not because you're a third party. However, you can accompany Mr. Jones to file a complaint," which I did. The following day we filed the complaint. On July 30th, 2020, the Office of Professional Standards was assigned an internal review in regards to false arrest, excessive force used against Mr. Jones. They found that there were several policy violations: conduct unbecoming of a sheriff's deputy, excessive force, and failure during the criminal process against Deputy Ryabn Gibson. And they also found that he was in line to be terminated. Within 4 days, on August 4th, Ryabn Gibson was terminated from his duties with the Greenville County Sheriff's Department. We were contacted via letter, phone call, and email, and given this information. Fast forward a few months later, we were contacted and told that SLED was getting involved because they definitely wanted to look into this situation. There were other instances where Officer Gibson had seemed to violate policy and protocol. And so with that being said, SLED got involved, and it led to where we are today. You know, I first want to make sure that I thank Sheriff Hobart Lewis for his diligence in helping bring this man to justice. You know, what happened to Benny Jones was very unfortunate. What happened to him in front of his children was even more unfortunate because they all experienced the emotional trauma behind it. We're not here to celebrate this arrest because this is not a celebration. This should have never happened in the first place. However, when we make cries for justice, this is what justice looks like. Also, I gave thanks to Sheriff Lewis because we always want to hold them accountable when there's something going on in the community. We demand accountability. We demand due process. And so we must also be able to step forward and say, thank you for due process of the law. Thank you for seeing that this man was unjustly and unfairly treated and abused by the police.
I just want to thank Sheriff Hobart, and I want to thank Traci for helping me with this situation. And it's an unfortunate situation that happened. I'm just glad they was able to resolve it and get things going. So other people that, you know, out there, you just living a normal life, that you shouldn't have to worry about it. When you see the police, you should feel safe, not terrified. In my case, I felt terrified. I hope this doesn't happen again. I'm sure it probably will, and it does all over. But like I said before, you know, they say one bad apple spoils the bunch. Not all officers are bad, and I hope everybody can learn from this outcome.
What kind of message do you think these charges send?
The charges is
For the
for the deputy. It should be a wake up call for the officers to let them know that just because you wear that badge, you don't just control everything, and you still have to be accountable as a person and about your job.
And how do you feel now? I'm sure it was rough right after, but do you still get some of that fear when you see all?
Yes, I do. I still do, because you never know what's on the next person's mind. And just as easily as how the officers treated me, I had my cell phone in my hand, and that situation could have went a whole bunch of other different ways. And I might not be here standing in front of you guys today. So I'm just thankful that, you know, it was other people around and we can get to the bottom of it.
What went through your mind when that officer, you know, put his hands on you?
Oh my God, somebody called the police because my children were watching. And the whole time when it was happening, I was asking him what was he doing and what was going on and why. And the only response I got was getting beaten. So, and I have 2 daughters and a son. So for me to tell my daughters if you can't get the daddy to look for the police for safety, it's kind of hard to build that trust in teenage daughters.
How are you physically now?
I'm still going through some issues with my leg. I went through a few issues with my neck and my back pains. But for the most part, we're healing, and you know, we just talk about it and try to get through it. It's a day-by-day process.
So did they like take you to jail that day? I mean,
Yes.
What effect did that have on your life?
A big effect on my life. I went to jail that day, so of course everybody's looking like, why did I go to jail? And just, you know, people in the community look at you a little bit different when you got a lot of commotion go on. So, but now everybody, you know, pretty much knows what happened, and so it's looking up and up. Yeah.
And also keep in mind that he is a single father. And so, you know, when this traumatic incident happened, not only did he go to jail, you know, the neighbors had to immediately get his children, watch his children for him, make sure that they were safe. So it was a terrible situation all the way around. Not only does Freedom Fighters Upstate South Carolina represent him, we also got attorney Jake Irwin, who is representing him as well. And a lawsuit has been filed against Greenville County.
Are you satisfied with the assault and battery charge?
I'm satisfied that something is done for once, because I mean, you see it all the time. Like, even in my neighborhood, I don't live in a real bad neighborhood. They have had some issues in my neighborhood before, but what neighborhood hasn't? But constantly, the police still patrol my neighborhood like National Guard on the street. So, but if I can keep anybody else from going through what I went through, just, you know, getting beat up by the police, it's not right, and they don't have the right to treat us any kind of way.
That's right. And anyone who feels they were a victim of police assault and brutality should come down to the law enforcement center and file a complaint and demand that it be investigated. You know, Benny was very fortunate in this case. He didn't lose his life, although he feared for his life in those moments. He didn't lose his life. However, the damage is lifetime, not only for him, but also for his children as well, who witnessed this. And so, you know, we can't live in a community where this is okay. And so I'm just thankful that the officer has been arrested by SLED. I think that really raises a huge message to those in the community who feel defenseless against the police and authority, to let them know that if you are mishandled by the police, and it's been proven that justice will be served and justice will prevail. And also, again, as I stated earlier, Sheriff Lewis, Sergeant Moats, and many others who came to Benny and talked to him on numerous occasions, you know, to help him through this process as well. I have to commend them. You know, a lot of times when we're going through this, we feel all alone. We feel like we're being pushed out of the community or exiled. by other groups. However, as a community as a whole, we need to understand that this does happen, and when it does, we are better together. Everyone working together to bring justice for people like Benny and his family.
And they can reach out to you if they ever need to
Oh,
be
yeah.
walked through the process.
Oh yeah, definitely. They can reach out to me, or they can just come up to the law enforcement center themselves, and file a complaint. I'm sure they get a lot of complaints. However, some of those complaints do have merit. And this is a case of one that definitely had merit and standings to it.
Are y'all surprised by the outcome?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I actually heard about it a couple of days ago, and I'm still kind of shaken. I'm still surprised by it, because it's like, wow, this is really what justice looks like. This man didn't have to lose his life for us to get justice. We're seeing justice play itself out in real time, and so yeah, definitely, we were definitely surprised by it. And I even held off on telling Benny for a few days because I wasn't even sure if the information was correct. So I'm just like waiting to make sure, before I contacted him and told him about it as well.
Do you feel that law enforcement in the area has gotten the message after all the protests and the marches and conversations that you guys have had?
I pray so.
You think they got it?
I pray so. We're still having conversations. It's a work in progress, And as Benny stated earlier, there are some bad officers on the force. But the thing about it is, having someone in command and higher command that recognizes that and removes them from the force will make the force better for everyone in the community. And so, my prayer is that no one else suffers the way Benny did. No one else loses their lives to the police, especially in this community. However, if they feel like they've been unjustly served, they can always reach out to me to assist them in filing a complaint. Because as I stated earlier, Benny, if he hadn't stepped up and said, okay, I'll go file a complaint, this never would have occurred. The officer was fired literally 4 days after we filed the complaint. 4 days after. And so to me, we hadn't even seen the video, and that was a huge message. And not only that, a few months later being informed that SLED was getting involved, this right here, this is freedom fighters, we can't take the credit for this. Benny has to get the credit for this because he wasn't afraid to step forward and file the complaint. And it was a legitimate complaint that had weight to it. And that's why we're here today.
So this was captured on body camera?
I'm sure it was. We haven't seen the body camera. However, I'm sure the sheriff and others who saw it and the attorney, they saw the need to terminate him. He was terminated. He went before a hearing. He tried to get his job back. He was denied that. And so even that raised a huge message. And then here we are several months later, SLED issues a warrant for his arrest. I mean, it's wild, I'm telling you. Yeah.
Was there cell phone video? Like somebody, your neighbor, did anyone get...
No, everything happened so fast.
Yeah. And like I said, he was just outside. He wasn't even the person being stopped by the police. The arrest was taking place in front of his house, in the street in front of his house. He was just a bystander or onlooker, checking out what was going on. And the officer approaches him and is like, hey, get on the ground, and roughs him up for no apparent reason. And that's where the true problem lies. He wasn't even the person under arrest. He wasn't even the suspect. They had already had the suspect. The suspect fled. And so instead of chasing the man that ran, you run up on the man that's minding his business in his yard. That's unacceptable.
Benny, when you learned that this deputy had some controversies with how he's treated people in the past, what was your reaction?
How did they let this go this far?
Because honestly, his name sounded familiar. When we found out who he was, I Googled him. I said, man, that name sounds familiar. And then I saw different news articles with his name in it. And I just said, wow, so Benny definitely wasn't the first victim. And so I don't know if there was never a complaint filed or there was never any follow-up with the complaint that was filed. But once SLED started investigating this, they uncovered many others.
Yeah, it was a scary situation.
Yeah.
It was just real scary.
And we're still fearful. Like this right here is, you asked about us being surprised, yeah, but then it's also, you also get a sense of nervousness when you're the face of a police officer. First of all, getting terminated, Secondly, being arrested by SLED in a small town like Greenville.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's kind of, it sort of gives you an element of fear as well. So, you know, there's a lot, we have a lot of emotion right now, a lot of emotion. Any other questions?
Vinny?
No, I just pray that nobody else has to go through what I went through, or their kids have to witness what they saw me go through. Because it's traumatic on the child seeing their parent get beat up by the person they're supposed to feel protection from. So, just, you know, to say all police aren't bad, just guys be careful, and if you have any injustice, just please come and report it.